What's going on, duelists? It's your boy Nick, bringing you on the channel for the very first time a take on Generator that I've been working on for a few months now, actually. Generator's been a deck that I've always wanted to bring to the channel for the longest time. However, I just never really found the right moment, and I couldn't find the right build. However, all of that changed after the release of Photon Hypernova, where we got two brand new cards for the theme, a main deck monster as well as an extra deck monster, both of which really shook up the way Generator initially played. And with the results of that, I wanted to bring the deck to you guys today on the channel for the very first time. So for those of you that are new to the channel, welcome. My name is Nick. We do Yu-Gi-Oh! Content mainly focused around rogue and casual decks. Things that most general Yu-Gi tubers won't really focus on. And I have a lot of deck profiles on my channel, a lot of live duel videos as well, even combo tutorials as well as test hands. So there's bound to be something here that you enjoy. If you're watching this right now, like the video, subscribe if you're not already. I'm working my way to 1,000 subscribers and I cannot get there without your help. Any like and subscription is very much truly appreciated. So with that being said, we're going to dive into this Generator deck list, and it's not a pure Generator list actually. I am actually running an Invoked package, and this is an Invoked Generator. So we're going to start off with that, along with a bit of an explanation as to why I'm running Invoked with Generators in the first place. So we're on triple copies of Alistair the Invoker. Also, I do want to mention that this is a clean 40 card deck list, so you gotta love it. But anyway, so we are running triple copies of Alistair the Invoker. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this card, upon its normal summon, he allows you to add a spell card called Invocation from the deck to your hand. And we'll get into what that card is shortly, but I'm pretty sure most of you watching this know who Alistair the Invoker is. A lot of you are probably mumbling in your head, normal summon Alistair! But there's actually a reason why we're playing this package, despite how many people might be annoyed by it. And the reason is because Generator is a deck that doesn't actually need its normal summon, so we can devote the normal summon to something else. Now, there is a lot of Generator decks that I've seen that are running a plant variant with like the Rika cards, and some of the Sunseed cards, or Sun Avalon, that's the word I was looking for. However, I didn't want to go down that route. I felt that the Invoked line was a lot more simpler in terms of like requiring less main deck space, and extra deck space for that matter, but also too, a single normal summon of Alistair gets you to a free Omni Negate in the form of Invoked Mechaba, who just so happens to be a level 9, something that the Generators definitely enjoy because all of them are level 9. And so there's a lot of hidden synergy there. Not to mention, the Alistair line, even if it gets like disrupted, I don't actually care about. Like, it's a win-win for me, because if the opponent disrupts this card or stops me from getting to a Mechaba, that's not even my main like line of play usually. So if they burned a hand trap, great. Now I can almost guarantee that my Generator line goes through. And if they don't stop this from happening, well, I get a free Omni Negate in the form of Mechaba. So there's really like no drawback here. So we played triple copies of Alistair the Invoker. Then, moving into the Generator monsters, brand new out of Photon Hypernova is triple copies of Vala, Sidir, the Generator of Bosses. Sorry if I'm butchering the names. But this card completely changed how Generator plays, because all the Generators previously, before this card's released, were basically Garnets. They were cards that you just didn't want to draw because they wouldn't be able to special summon themselves from hand. So they were kind of just dead cards in hand. But that all changes with the release of her, because what you can do is, if Vala is in your hand or the graveyard, you can send one other Generator card from your hand to grave, and then special summon the Vala from your hand or graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field. Then, if the Vala is special summoned, she can target a Generator monster in the graveyard except herself and special summon it. So what Vala effectively does is she turns any Generator that's in your hand into an extender, basically, because she can pitch that Generator to summon herself from the hand or graveyard, and then upon her special summon, she can special summon a Generator from the graveyard, which I think is absolutely incredible. So She's pretty much like a 1.5 card rank 9, basically, because all you need is another generator in hand to pitch. So very good card there. Then we're just playing 2 copies of Lopter, Shadow of the Generator Bosses. We're cut this down to a 2 of, because our main normal summon for this deck is Alistair, and I don't want to clog on having too many normal summons. Plus, not to mention, we can get Lopter out of the deck with the Generator field spell. I'll think of Lopter as kind of like a Lone Fire Blossom, but for the Generator archetype. He contributes himself to special summon a level 9 Generator from your deck, which is really cool. Then we're on 2 copies of Har, Generator Boss of Storms. This is, in my opinion, one of the best generators in the main deck because he's an Omni Negate. Also one of the largest at 3,000 stat line. And if the opponent adds a card from the deck to their hand, you can force them to send a monster from their hand or field to the graveyard, which is really cool. So any +1 they get, Har pretty much nullifies that, which I think is great. Now, something that I want to bring up about the remaining generators we're going to talk about is a lot of them have an effect that requires them to tribute some number of generators or some number of the type of monster that they represent. In this case, Har, in order to get his Omni Negate, he has to tribute 2 generators and or spellcaster monsters to be able to negate a spell trap or monster effect the opponent used. The reason why I bring that up is because the generators, aside from them being boss monsters in their own right, they can be boss monsters for the types that they each represent. So like if you build a spellcaster deck, for example, you can theoretically play a copy of Har, Generator Boss of Storms in the deck, and still have that Omni Negate live because Har only needs to tribute other spellcasters. He doesn't have to tribute other generators, even though he can, which I think is pretty unique. So 2 copies of Har. Then we're on the 1 copy of Mardell. She's pretty much the roto for the deck, but you just play her at 1. I don't think you really need any more than that. I've seen some lists play 2, but again, the generators, even though we do have Vala now, there are still bricks, and the more level 9s you play, the more likely you are going to draw unplayable hands. So we're cut Mardell down to the 1 of. When she's normal or special summoned, she does let you add a generator card from the deck to hand, which I think is pretty cool, obviously. But again, at 1, I think she's perfectly fine. Then we play the 1 Gila, Generator Boss of Doom. Something that I do want to mention, though, is each generator has a clause that states you can only control 1 of itself. And every generator has that same restriction. So does Vala, but obviously Vala is obviously too important to not run more than, 1 of. So most of the generators we are on in the main deck are at 1 for this reason as well. But anyway, Gila, she can, she's like a Monster Reborn for the archetype. By attributing a generator or a zombie type monster, she can target a generator in grave and revive it, which is pretty cool. So very good for the grind game or the recursion. Then we play 1 Nidhogg, Generator Boss of Ice. This card can actually negate the special summons of monsters, which is really, really cool. So think of this card like a solemn warning of sorts, which is really, really cool. Then we play 1 Utgarda, Generator Boss of Delusion. He's pretty much a target banished at quick effect speed, which is really nice of any card on the field. And then we play 1 copy of Trias Hierarchia, which might as well be a generator. It's a level 9 fairy that, while it's in the hand or the graveyard, contribute up to 3 fairy monsters. And depending on how many fairies you tributed, the card can special summon itself, pop a card on field, and draw 2 cards if you tributed all 3 fairies for its summon, which is pretty cool. So if you tribute 1, it summons itself. If you tributed 2 fairies, it summons itself and pops a card, non-target. And if you tributed 3 fairies, it summons itself, pops a card, and lets you draw 2. But we just play this as a 1-of because it is not a generator, unfortunately. But what's cool about this is that all the generator tokens, which the field spell generates, and we'll get to that shortly, are fairy-type monsters. So it works very well with the Trias Hierarchia. But moving on, we are actually on a very small Dogmatica package in this deck. So we do main deck the 1 Ecclesia the Virtuous, followed by the 1 Dogmatica Fleur-de-Lis. Just because, we are on Invoked, so it just kind of makes sense that, the Dogmatica package would slide right in pretty nicely into the deck. And not only that, but Ecclesia just gives us that extension in the event that we do get shut down pretty hard by hand traps, for example. Ecclesia just allows us to search a free non-target negate, in addition to just putting bodies on board, which I think is really crucial. So 1 Ecclesia, followed by the 1 Fleur-de-Lis. And then to round out the monster count, we play 2 copies of Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill, followed by 2 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring for our hand traps of choice in the main deck. Moving on to the spell cards now, we play triple copies of Generator Boss Stage, which is the Generator field spell, and this card pretty much does everything we need. Once per turn, if a card or cards is added from the main deck to your opponent's hand, except during the damage step, if you want to look at a ruling on this, I'll just explain it to you guys, but when the opponent draws their card for turn, it meets the activation condition for the boss stage because the opponent did add a card from deck to hand, which is really insane. So the moment the opponent draws for their turn, it triggers this field spell. What happens is, it allows you to special summon a generator monster from your deck in defense position. Then, if you special summoned a generator monster during your opponent's turn, you can special summon as many generator tokens, which are fairy, light, level 4, attack 1500 and defense 1500 as possible, to your side of the field in attack position, but destroy them during the end phase, even if the boss stage leaves the field. So what happens is that, off of one field spell, you get to summon any generator boss you want from deck, and then when that occurs, you special summon, you flood the field with as many generator tokens as you possibly can. Now, what's nice about this is that the generator tokens serve as pretty much tribute fodder for your generator boss monster effects. So like Hard requires you to tribute 2 generators or 2 spellcasters to be able to omni-negate something, well, you use the tokens for that cost. Gila requires you to tribute a monster to get the reborn effect, you tribute the token for cost. Nidhogg, same thing, you're going to be tributing the tokens. Utgarda, you're going to be tributing the tokens. And like I said, the Trias Hierarchia is also going to be tributing the tokens that this field spell provides. And this field spell will do that every single turn, which is insane. This card by itself is like full combo basically. And one of the reasons why we are on the Invoked package is because making a card like Mechaba insulates the boss stage from being hit by cards like Ash Blossom, and also prevents us from getting Nibiru'd on our opponent's turn, which can happen because if you think about it, if we have no monsters on field and the opponent draws for turn, we summon a monster, and then we summon up to 4 generator tokens, which would be 5 summons. So we can technically get nibbed, which is insane. So making cards like Mechaba pretty much insulate us from cards like that, which I think is cool, and another reason why the Invoked package works so well with this deck. But moving on, we play 2 copies of Magical Meltdown, just to search us, our copies of Alistair. So we're basically on 5 copies of Alistair, plus the 2 Lopter in the deck, which makes up for about 7 normal summons in this particular list. So it's very consistent. Then we are on triple copies of World Legacy Monstrosity. Because Mechaba is a level 9, if we are able to get that far down the Invoke package, or down the Invoke line, we can activate Monstrosity targeting the Mechaba and then special summoning 2 other level 9 monsters from our deck with different types and attributes from the targeted monster. So think of this like an emergency teleport, but for level 9s, which is really insane. Also, if you can use the other effect that this card has, which is it'll allow you to special summon a level 9 monster from your hand. So triple copies of Monstrosity just really boost the consistency of the deck overall. Then we're on triple copies of Nadir Servant because we are playing, like I said, the small Dogmatica package. So you dump a monster from the extra deck to grave, and then you search an Ecclesia basically from deck or graveyard to your hand. And then whatever you sent from the extra deck to grave most likely gives you some type of beneficial effect. So very cool there. Then we are on 2 copies of Invocation. Just 2. I thought about cutting it to a 1, but I do appreciate having the second copy in the main deck, especially with decks like Hashtira rolling around. In case one of our copies of Invocation gets banished face down, we still do have another copy to be able to make our Invoke fusions through the Alistair line. Then to round out the spells, 1 Foolish Burial, 1 Terraforming. Foolish Burial can also be considered full combo on its own, because Foolish Burial allows us to dump a card like Vala directly from our deck to the graveyard, or it can dump a Trias Hierarchia from our deck to the graveyard as well, which I think is very cool. And then Terraforming is obviously Terraforming. We can use it to search out the Generator boss stage, or search out the Magical Meltdown. So that's it for the spells. Now we're going to move on to the traps. We just played triple copies of Generator Boss Fight, which is effectively 3 more copies of the field spell. It lets us activate a Generator field spell directly from the deck or graveyard, and then the opponent draws a card, which may seem like a drawback, but when they draw a card, that does trigger the first effect of the field spell. So if you go Boss Fight to activate Boss Stage and they draw, the Boss Stage will trigger its full effects, which I think is very unique. So triple boss fight. And then for the last trap we main deck is one copy of the Dogmatica Punishment to round out this 40 card main deck list. We just play Punishment as a one-of, just because it's a search target for Ecclesia, and it does lock us out of the extra deck until the end of the next turn when we use it. So we do have to be mindful of when we activate this card, but it's very powerful nonetheless. So now moving on to the extra deck. This extra deck is actually pretty interesting. So we're on one copy of the Leviathan, the Generator Boss of Shadows. This is brand new out of Hypernova. It's a rank 9 monster that, as a quick effect, we can tribute herself to then special summon a non-fairy Generator Xyz from the extra deck, which is going to be Jormungandr, and then we can attach cards from any field and or graveyards to the special summon monster as material, up to the number of materials this card had. So effectively what she is, she's non-target, non-destruction, and removal by tagging herself out, summoning a Jormungandr, and then taking cards that either the opponent has in their field or graveyard and attaching them to Jormungandr as material, which is just nuts. Not to mention, she has a continuous effect where, while she's in the field, all monsters the opponent controls lose 1,000 attack and defense. So that's a pretty huge debuff. And then we play the one copy of Jormungandr, which is the old Generator boss, but still very strong nonetheless. It's a quick effect. It can detach a material, force both players to draw a card, and then the players who drew have to attach a card from their hand or field to the Jormungandr as material. So every turn, this card gains 1,000 attack, basically, and he gains 1,000 attack times the number of materials that he has. So he gets very, very big, very fast. I would like to run duplicates of both of these. However, the extra deck space in this particular list is a little tight. So unfortunately, I am only able to get away with running one-ofs of each of those. Then for other generic rank 9s, we play one Enter Blathnir, followed by one Mirrorlogic Aggregator. This card is very slept on in my opinion. Very powerful card. Whenever it's Xyz summoned, it lets us send an extra deck monster from the extra deck to the graveyard, triggering a slew of effects. Which is very, very nice. And the Enter Blathnir just being really cool non-target removal, or non-destruction removal as well. So that rounds out the Xyzes that we're running. Now onto the Invoke Fusions. We're on one Mechaba, one Purgatrio, and one Algoides. Mechaba is obviously what we make when going first, just as an Omni Negate. It's also level 9. Purgatrio is nice for going second to break boards. And what is really nice about the Generators is that Vala happens to be a fire monster. So we can actually go into Purgatrio very easily, without much effort, and be able to just OTK the opponent and break through their board, since Purgatrio can attack every monster they control. And then Algoides is nice just in the event that either our Purgatrio or Mechaba gets snuffed, and we go like turn 3 or 4, for example, and we can make an Algoides by banishing one of these from grave, and Algoides gives us a pop, as well as getting a bunch of attack to help push for that OTK as well. Then we're on double Entis and double Garua, just for the Dogmatica package we run for the Nadir Servants, pretty much. Also, Mirrorlogic Aggregator can dump either one of these to grave as well, and they're also punishment targets, technically, which is very nice. Then we play one Almirage, one Artemis. Since we are playing the Alistair, we need a way to link him off to be able to make our invocation live. And then we play the one BLS Soldier of Chaos, just because sometimes we need a way to link off the Ecclesia and the Fleur-de-Lis to be able to put Ecclesia in grave so we can activate another Nadir Servant, and BLS is just a great way of doing that. And then we also play one copy of the Tri-Brigade Arms Bucephalus II. This is in here because it's a extra deck target for punishment, and then when we send the Bucephalus, its effect triggers to allow us to send a Garua, so we get a free draw off of that at resolution. So that's it for the main deck, or extra deck, guys. Now we're going to run through the side very briefly. We're on triple copies of Kurikara Divine Carnate, followed by one copy of Herald of the Orange Light. So we side into these when we know we're going to be going second, pretty much. The Herald is a nice tech choice because we do play a lot of fairies in this deck. The Vala's a fairy, the Elopter's a fairy, the Trios Hierarchy is a fairy, as well as the Kurikaras are fairies as well. So we could probably get some really good use out of Herald here in this particular list. Then we're on triple copies of Hey Trunade, followed by 2 copies of Raigeki. Again, just, board breakers. Hey Trunade's back row hate, Raigeki, just outs threats or baits negates. Either way, we're having a good time. Then we're on 2 copies of Forbidden Droplet in the side, followed by the one Duster. Duster again for the back row matchups. Droplet's a good card because we can pitch cards like Vala out of our hand to negate something, and then just use Vala's effect from graveyard, which is really, 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 really cool. And then to round out the side deck is triple copies of Fist of the Unrivaled Tenyi. This is pretty much for when we're going to be going first. We side into this. It states when a spell or trap card or monster effect is activated while we control a face-up non-effect monster, negate the activation. This card is not once per turn, and you're probably wondering, well, when are we ever going to control a non-effect monster? Well, the field spell, the Generator boss stage, provides us all the non-effect monster fodder we need. The tokens are treated as non-effect monsters, therefore it makes, as long as you control any generator token during the opponent's turn, Fist of the Unrivaled Tenyi is live. So that's a really cool tech choice again for the side, for when we know we're going to be going first specifically. But that rounds out the deck, guys. Like I said, this is my take on Invoked Generator. Very cool, like I said, very nice list at 40 cards. I do want to take this to locals, and when that happens, I'll let you guys know how I do. But stay tuned on the channel for a combo tutorial and test hand video for this particular deck. And like I said, if you've watched the video this far and you haven't hit that like button, please like the video, subscribe as well if you haven't done so already. And like I said, duelists, stay tuned for more really cool Yu-Gi-Oh content coming your way.